Dr. Andreas Krieg is a senior lecturer in security studies at King's College London and a fellow at the Institute of Middle Eastern Studies. Welcome to the programme.
Hello, good evening.
How on earth does Israel, for example, prove, and US says it's seen intelligence and Israel say they have intelligence, that Hamas are using this hospital, the underneath of the hospital, tunnels underneath the hospital, as some kind of command centre? How would they have proven that?
Well, it's very difficult. We're in a very convoluted space. We're also in this war over narratives where each side is trying to use information to favor its own position. And so we have to be always very doubtful and exercise a lot of scrutiny in kind of testing intelligence and trying to see what information is coming out and who's sending it. It is very difficult because I think there are three different issues here. One is, are Hamas fighters in the hospital? Yes or no. Secondly, is it being used as a command center? Yes or no. Or are there tunnel systems in bunker near or underneath the hospital or in close proximity? These are three different sort of allegations. So far, the Israelis haven't proven either of them. They haven't proven that there were any Hamas people in the hospital. They didn't prove that there were any tunnels near the hospital. And they were also not didn't provide any evidence that there is a command center in there. So in the past, the Israelis have used video material and created, they're very prolific when it comes to strategic communication in showing that.
The line is dropping out a little bit. I think maybe we are going to try and get Andreas Krieg back on a different line, because it's a shame, actually, we can't hear everything he's saying. Dr. Andreas Krieg talking about how Israel pulls together the evidence to actually prove that Hamas are operating and using the Shifa hospital as a command base. Are we going to try and get him back? We are going to try and get him back. We're going to try and get him back because clearly we heard earlier today, the IDF was saying there was no fighting inside the hospital. 4 terrorists were neutralized outside that hospital. But the WHO, the World Health Organization, says it's lost all contact with its personnel inside the hospital. Witnesses inside who've been speaking to our correspondent in the region, Orla Guerin, have said they've witnessed 6 tanks, dozens of commandos as well. I think we've got Dr. Andreas Krieg back. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I don't know what's been going on.
That sounds a lot better. So essentially, what kind of intelligence would the Israelis use? Is it all on the ground human intelligence? What else could they use to say, yep, this is a legitimate target because even though it's a hospital, Hamas are operating from there?
So the Israelis have eyes all over the Gaza Strip. So they control all the flows of information. They can control anything that goes in and out of the Gaza Strip. They control all the telecommunications. They have eyes all over the place through drones. So on ground, over ground, they can really see what's going on and obviously can use human intelligence. But what we've seen over the last couple of weeks is that the Israelis have exploited most of their intelligence advantage to hit already and destroy most of the targets that they had. So they're running out of targets now. And now to get underground, they don't have the intelligence that they need to actually know what's going on. So I think the intelligence picture that Israel is using is far less complete than it was a couple of weeks ago. And hence they're making more and more mistakes. And there will be more misjudgments as they start attacking other targets. And that's kind of the concern with the Shifa hospital.
And that's why we're talking about this being potentially a pivotal moment, because hospitals are protected under international law when it comes to being targets in warfare, as are schools. So what are the problems for the Israelis if, as maybe is happening, they say that this is a base for Hamas? If they cannot prove it, the international community, which is already shifting, it sounds like, in its message to Israel about greater protection for civilians. France has already called for a ceasefire. President Macron. There is a shift going on. So if it can't produce the intelligence, that is going to change the international community's approach to this, no doubt, would you say?
Certainly, yes. And I think the IDF in particular has been more preoccupied with creating pieces of strategic communication rather than actual pieces of intelligence. So it's more about how they present what they can find as evidence, and they've not been very sufficient and effective with that, because a lot of it has been doctored or been used with together with mis and disinformation. And so what they need to know now is really prove that this was a valid target, that the use of force against this protected institution, which was a hospital, was actually legitimate. If they can't do that, we're already at this pivotal moment where I think Western partners are, patience is running low in the US, certainly in some European capitals, where people are saying, look, we want a ceasefire, not just a pause, we want a complete cessation of hostilities, which means the IDF is fighting against the clock, and time is certainly not on their side. And I think any sort of operational mistake, any war crime, or any activity that could be seen as a war crime would be used to kind of tip the balance against the IDF, putting more pressure on the Netanyahu government to basically withdraw and bring this war to an end. Hence, they have to now exercise absolute caution with any sort of activity that they're doing.
Good. I'm glad we re-established the line. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Andreas Krieg, there, Senior Lecturer in Security Studies at King's College London, Fellow at the Institute of Middle Eastern Studies. And of course, there is that vote